A crowd of 600 persons, mostly Negroes, turned out for the inquest. The hostility was obvious, and it showed clearly the explosive emotional state of the Negro community. The hearing room was much too small, and the crush at the door by those pushing to get seats caused one woman to faint. Another one in the crowd was injured. A larger hearing room was obviously needed, and the inquest was delayed so that the transfer could be made to another building. The crowd raced across the street to the courthouse. At the new, larger courtroom, it soon became obvious that it, too, would not be large enough. Mrs. Leonard Deadwyler, the 25-year-old widow, was escorted through the crowded aisles. But the hearing was still not ready to start. The aisles were jammed, and the seats up front reserved for the witnesses were all taken up by spectators. Those spectators refused to give up their seats. They told you that you have to leave?
Definitely. They're asking everybody in these aisles to move so they can have room for 100 witnesses. Now, we're under the opinion that the only witnesses that are concerned are the ones that were in the car, and the officers were in their car, and there was no 100 people around there.
Of course, it's not for the audience.
Well, justice involves us because we're the victims of injustice. See, we're the victims of injustice, malpractices of injustice, and we're not getting any justice. And if we're not going to get any justice in these seating accommodations, the witnesses that are directly concerned with the case is not going to get any justice. It will be a justifiable homicide just like the rest.
I told them that I would refuse to try to clear the aisle until I saw that they were acting in good faith. Because one man said, we're going to clear the aisle and then clear the auditorium. And I told them that I would never be put in that position of faking all of these people out.
This delicate hearing is off to a shaky start at best, with the Negro population warning that if the officer is not charged with murder as they demand, there will be more trouble in Watts. Harry Arrow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
I hereby command you to disperse. You have 5 minutes to clear the area here. Anyone remaining after I give this order will be arrested for failure to disperse.
There was little violence last night. Some rocks hurled, windows broken, but no looting and no injuries. Hundreds of police patrolled all night and were out in force when the coroner's inquest began again this morning.
The security measures are tight today, the spectators being let in one by one. The police are concerned for the safety of their fellow officers who will be testifying in these hearings. Concerned that the violence of Watts could erupt here.
I want you to spread out through the corridor, maintain walking space throughout the entire area, throughout the entire building. Now, if this isn't maintained, we will maintain it.
Until they give us the loudspeakers, I think we should stay right here.
But no speakers were put in the halls, and the ugly crowd was pushed back by the officers. Inside, the first to testify was a policeman who described Deadwyler's car speeding at 80 miles an hour.
I observed the passenger officer of the police vehicle to have his arm extended out the door window with his police revolver in it. For the next 2 blocks, we continued at this speed, and I observed the passenger officer to either be shouting or yelling at Mr. Deadwyler.
The next witness, 11-year-old Deborah Barnett.
Had you seen the officer before he fired the shot?
Yes, he was the officer who had the gun out, pointed it at Mr. Deadwyler's car when he was side by side with him.
I see. That's the passenger officer.
Yes. Mr. Deadwyler fell out.
And that's the same man who did the shooting?
Yes. And the policeman who was driving parked the car in front of Mr. Deadwyler's car.
There was conflict in today's testimony. Those outside the hearing room still wait tensely for an answer. Was Deadwyler's death an accident, or was the shot fired deliberately by the white officer? Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Officers followed stringent security measures, searching spectators as they entered the courtroom looking for possible hidden weapons. The security procedures were prompted by rioting and courtroom disturbances, which followed the Deadwyler shooting. Mrs. Deadwyler testified that she, her husband, and the passenger were speeding to the hospital on May 7th in the belief she was about to give birth prematurely. She said their car pulled over once as sirens warned that a fire truck was coming. Immediately after that, she said, a police car pulled up and she described the shooting.
My husband leaned over me to look at the officer, and he asked him if he would lead him out to General Hospital or take me there. And then the gun went off.
At one point in the questioning, Mrs. Deadwyler was asked to show the relative position of the pistol as it was held by the officer at the time her husband was shot. She stood up and indicated where the line of fire would be past her body.
After the gun went off, I asked him why did he shoot my husband. He didn't say anything. He just turned around and was putting his gun in his holster, and he was walking around to the back of the car.
An anonymous telephone bomb threat prompted a shakedown in the courtroom, but no bomb was found. Officer Gerald Bova, accused of killing Deadwyler, will testify tomorrow. Harry Arrow, CBS News, Los Angeles.